I remember last year after Sadiq's speech, I think he was widely praised as, I think, the best speaker of the conference, and, you know, kind of a leader in waiting and the guy that could step into Corbyn's shoes. And who knows whether that all that coverage influenced what Corbyn was thinking. But it does feel a bit like that. But, you know, I'm not sure if it's going to be a huge loss to all of us, because the speeches on the main stage can be pretty dull. I remember at Tory conference last year, I think ministers were pretty much banned from saying anything interesting at all. There was very few interesting speeches on the stage. So, you know.
Also, is that entirely fair? I mean, we don't say, why are the Tories not having the mayor of somewhere or the leader of a council speaking?
Well, they might,
just because Andy Burnham and Sadiq Khan are big names and we know who they are.
But also
they're the only Labour people in position.
But is it fair to then say that he's trying to dull?
No, I don't think he's trying to silence them so much as I think this conference is going to basically be just a victory parade for Jeremy Corbyn.
It's the first one he's had in the last few years without a contest.
But in a year where there's been major terrorist attacks in Manchester and a series of terrorist attacks in London, it is outrageous that the mayors of those cities, both of whom are Labour and both of them won, unlike Jeremy Corbyn, it's outrageous that those people aren't being invited, not just to speak, but really actually being the core of the conference, where Labour's in power.
Shown exactly as where Labour is in power. This is where Labour can make it govern.
The counter-argument that Jeremy's team would say is that what they want to do is give more airspace to ordinary party activists and members. The membership has risen exponentially under Jeremy's leadership. That's got to be a good thing, surely, letting the members, the ordinary sort of party foot soldiers, speak their mind. Surely that's it.
As I said earlier, one of the tasks about politics, of course, is to involve the public and involve members of political parties. But more important than that, it's about leadership. And actually, that means you want to hear from the people who you've selected and elected to be leaders of your own local party or leaders of your own city, and certainly members of Parliament who have a leadership job to do. I remember, I'm old enough to remember, that you had a whole series of very important speeches being given from the floor of the conference by members of the cabinet and the shadow cabinet, and the conference is being totally dominated by extremist, hard left delegates from the constituencies. I remember Dennis Healey having to make a famous speech about what had happened in 1978-79. I mean, it is silly for the Labour Party to go back to a party conference which is less like a professional political event and more like essentially a rabble-rousing.
Except the key shadow members are speaking.
Well, the hard left ones are, yes.
I mean, we're also old enough to remember people being thrown out from the floor of a Labour Party conference, aren't we? Ordinary members.
Are we?
Yeah, I am.
Don't remember that. That's a fair point too. But I do think ultimately, if what you really want to do is to say this is an alternative government that is, you know, ready to take up the reins of power in a hung parliament. It's pretty strange that you don't actually try and have most, if not all, of your shadow cabinet saying something. Certainly, the key spokespeople setting out the programme on health or education, crucially the economy, which I think will be covered on. But it's very odd, and I think the problem is it demonstrates that this Labour isn't any longer a political party that thinks of itself as an alternative government. It's just a collection of sort of hard left activists.
So after that, that sounds like it's going to be fun, by the way.
I'm not going now. No, I said that.
There also is a leadership contest, of course, going on within the Labour Party.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Will they be Richard and Anas?
They'll have a platform of some kind, I would think. Yeah.
They'll both get speeches at Scottish Labour Party, you'd imagine, at the evening, right?
You would think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Sorry, Kevin, what will the key message be from Corbyn and from the conference?
I think it's one more heat.
One more. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
That's always worked before. Not
one more heat.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be, as far as I can see, any attempt to analyse why they didn't win the election.
Because they convinced themselves that they did.
To tweak the platform that they stood on. as one more eve.
There's no attempt to win over any Tory voters that that got away last time around.
Nor any Labour voters who didn't vote Labour.
It's not entirely clear where the extra voters are going to come from. We'll find that out. But I mean, I do think what is interesting about this the changing nature of Labour conference, and having been for years, traditionally the opening night of Labour conference, Sunday night, is you go to the Progress rally and all the thrusting Blairite moderates are there, sort of saying what they're going to do and how the party needs to move forward, and sort of parading their ambitions, and you can look and see who might be the next leader of the party and what great ideas they've got, and how they're going to modernise the party and move it forward. You look at the Progress rally this time. I think Stella Creasy is there, and a few others. There's really no point going. It's a bunch of MPs who haven't got a cat in hell's chance of being leader now, and they can't really influence policy at all. Whereas you have an alternative event where all of the Corbynistas are lining up to speak, and that's, as a journalist, I'll certainly be going to that one. What's the point of going to the Progress one?
Ed Miliband is even going to be at the World Transformed.
Russell Brand?
He's going there, yeah.
Russell Brand's going to be there.
At least they're in the same place at the same time. That's helpful.
I don't think Corbyn was ever at the Progress rally, and then he become a leader.
But there are some
people saying he didn't have a cat and chance of hell.
I think there are some people who previously may have spoken at Progress events who are at the Momentum.
Yeah, well, Chuka Umunna is famously the only person that spoke to the Progress event and the Compass event at the same conference.
I remember that. I remember going to both of those events. Chuka spoke at both. Yeah, he was keeping his options open, I think. Yeah, sort of classic Chuka style.
Yeah.
So then we're on to the Tory conference. I mean, is that just going to be a Tory beauty contest, you think? Is it people jockeying for position to take over from the Prime Minister when she goes, although she says she might stay on?
I think, as David said, now that after this week and after Boris's intervention, everything he says will be poured over. It'll be really interesting to see how people react to Jacob Rees-Mogg, whether he keeps his head down or...
Well, we found out at the weekend he's speaking about 9 different things. I mean, his diary's chock a lot. He looks like he's sort of up to something.
Equally interesting will be seeing if any right-wing MPs actually say anything nice about Jacob Rees-Mogg, because his problem is that he hasn't got any MP support, and as we know, you need the MP support to get into the final two. There's no MPs that have come out to bat for him, so as well as watching Rees-Mogg to see what he says, if any right-wingers come forward and say, Jacob will be a great PM,
I don't know how right
that'll be very interesting.
He hasn't got any. Rees-Mogg outrider.
I mean, are the Tories concerned not so much about who the leader will be, but actually winning the next election? Is there any sense of foreboding there, or because some statisticians I talked to are saying, the Tories are going to get wiped out at the next.
It depends, I suppose, when the election comes. But I think we're going to come on to that a little bit later. But next up is going to be the SNP comms. Now, what I find interesting about that is that Nicola Sturgeon has got to tread a bit of a fine line between not scaring those who are still not convinced by independence, reassuring those who maybe are not best pleased with how they're running the Scottish Government, but also at the same time keeping her activists on board who want independence and another referendum as soon as possible. And thus far, she's just about managed to ride both those horses at the same time. How's she going to do it this time? You know her pretty well. How's she going to do it this time?
We were talking earlier, and I was saying, I think she was right, and it was astute after the Remain vote in Scotland after Brexit to come out and say that this puts independence back on the agenda. And she was undoubtedly wrong-footed by a snap election that none of us could have predicted. And you're right, she now has to balance all of those things, because the SNP, shock horror, are a party of independence. They're not going to shelve independence. She's not going to do that. But she's also a gradualist, like many in the party that have led it. I think she manages to get that argument over to the activists, because the bottom line is, unless the SNP are the party of government, there will not be an independence referendum. So it doesn't matter how disgruntled you may feel about current situations around education, etc. If you want independence, you need them in government.
And it's interesting that the party that's growing in Scotland is the Conservative Party.
Well, on what basis, though, Dan?
At the last election.
Well, and then you now look at the YouGov poll of the other day, and also research being done by Edinburgh University that shows at least a third of those supporters are not Tory voters, and it was a protest vote. So it's a really fragile vote that Ruth's going to have to work very hard to keep. And this is where I think the problem for Nicola is. If Richard Leonard, who's up for the Labour leadership, and he is seen as a Corbyn man, if he gets it, does that mean that Nicola starts to think the SNP should go to the left while Ruth takes the centre ground? You know, and I think Nicola would be wrong to go to the left. I mean, if you look at the last election, and on the basis of what you were saying, the votes that went up for the Tories, Scotland's not this radical hotbed of left-wing politics.
I never thought that.
You know, I think that will be her dilemma, how she pitches the SNP.
We talk about Jeremy making sure that Sadiq and Andy Burnham aren't on the platform. Will Nicola try and make sure that Alex Salmond's nowhere to be seen?
No, and I have to say, I think Alec isn't a problem for Nicola.
Do you not think?
No, I don't. And I think his recent his recent interventions talking about other arrangements you could make out with the EU haven't been helpful to her. But she, and I know this, she does not find him unhelpful.
Even when he's making inappropriate gags?
Well, did anybody, you know, my worry about that is us in the media have a particular view about Alex Salmond. And it was okay for Ruth Davidson to give a speech to journalists where she talked about withdrawing a large Johnson and having post-coital cigarettes, etc. Alex Salmond says something and the world goes mad. I mean, you know, there are different measures here about what we think is appropriate.
I do remember us writing that story when Ruth said... I
don't think we criticised. I think it was... the media found that all very funny.
Ruth Davidson,
lobby
wowing the
bit of a lad,
lobby.
you know, and everyone loves it. Yeah.